WJLS. 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 It's a good morning on WJLS. 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 Satellite weather. WJLS. 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 WJLS Beckley. WJLS Beckley. WJLS Beckley.
Welcome to Out Your Way on the personality stations WJLS and WBKW. This is Bill O'Brien, your host, and it's my pleasure here for WJLS listeners to sing happy birthday to ourselves. Today is our 42nd anniversary of going on the air, and it's my pleasure also to introduce the guiding force behind this operation, Mr. Joel Smith, Jr. Mr. Smith, in 1939, 42 years ago, what were you thinking?
Well, 42 years ago, it was Sunday at 4:45. I was thinking then that in an hour and 15 minutes we'd sign off.
We signed on at noon and went off then
That's right.
At 6, huh?
On at noon and off at 6 on that first Sunday. We signed off at 6 o'clock. All sat down, took a deep breath, said, "My goodness, what a day." And then someone brought the brilliant idea that we had to have a program for tomorrow. So we had to spend the rest of the evening putting together Monday program.
So you'd put all your efforts together for that first day and then had to hustle for the next day, huh?
On Monday was quite a day, too. But we got through Monday and subsequent days thereafter.
What was the response to the initial broadcasts?
Oh, it was tremendous. We, back in those days, everything was live. And we started to announce the fact that in the newspaper we would be on the air at noon, invited people to come see us. The streets were crowded, the staircases were crowded coming into the studio. We had more people than we knew what to do with.
Now, the studio was in the same location then?
We haven't moved a thing since 1900 and, 39.
39, yeah.
Had to stop and think. But that was quite a day that Sunday.
You've shown me some of the telegrams from all over the
telegrams
place.
from all over the place. We were a big-time operator, 100 watts on 1,210 kilocycles.
Why did we move? We're now at 560 and 5,000 watts.
Well, we moved from 1210 to 1240 in the first commission changes. I think WCAU in Philadelphia is now on 1210. 1240 became the local frequency. But we couldn't do much good in the terrain with 100 watts on 1240, which was the local frequency. So we started looking around for another frequency that would do a better job in the hilly terrains. And AM radio waves have a pronounced effect that the longer the wavelength, the better it travels over the Earth. Consequently, we wanted to be down the low end of the dial. We found 560 and applied for it. Came on initially with 250 watts on 560.
That was what year?
That was sometime after the war, 1946, after the World War II. I call that the war.
Yes.
And then to protect ourselves, well, we came on with 250 watts, I guess it was actually during the war years, with the promise to the commission that as soon as the war was over and equipment became available, we'd go to 1,000 watts. So that was in 1946, I believe we went to 1,000 watts. Operated there with 1,000 for a bit, and then felt that in order to protect the frequency as much as anything else from other interlopers who might want to get on 560, it would be advisable for us to request and ask for the maximum power permittable on 560, which happens to be 5,000 watts, which we are now.
Why did you go into this business? It's obviously you were a pioneer in the business, and you, as I understand it, are the single man who has operated a broadcast facility longer than anybody else in the state. Mm-hmm. That's quite a record.
Yeah, that's quite a record. Well, I got into business back about 1936 or 7. A radio engineer came through Beckley. He was a consultant, very nice chap, and dropped in on the Chamber of Commerce and said, thought Beckley would be a good place to put a radio station. Did they know anyone around here who might be interested in a radio station? I happened to be a ham radio operator at the time, and the only person they could think of was me. I still am, yes. And so they referred him to me. We got together and filed the application with the commission for the 100 watts on 1210. It was set as everything was in those days for hearing, because they were afraid that we would interfere with stations in Charlotte, North Carolina, and some other places around, who also appeared in opposition to our coming on the air at 1210 with 100 watts in Beckley. We had the hearing in Washington, I recall very well. And believe it or not, the examiner recommended to the commission that the application be denied because, in his word, I was a mere youth of 21. God, I can't believe that. Mere youth of 21, and shouldn't be entrusted with a broadcast station to serve such an important area. Got a new attorney and went back and argued the thing before the commission again. This time the attorney pointed out that at 21 I was a legal of legal age, and they couldn't deny it, so they granted the application. And we came back and started to put the station on the air. We built our own transmitter and most of our equipment. Now, I'll well recall, I presume, one of the few times that a FCC commissioner came to visit us was during the construction period. I was sitting up in the front office there on the floor unpacking the console we had bought. And I looked up, and here's a fellow standing up there. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm cleaning up here, getting ready to put a radio station on the air." He said, "Well, I'm Irvin Stewart." He said, "I'm a commissioner from the FCC." Well, Mr. Stewart, Dr. Stewart, became president of the University of West Virginia in time, as you know. But to my knowledge, that's the only time I've known of a commissioner coming in and help put on a radio station.
I was going to say, that's highly unusual for a commissioner to make an in-person visit to any facility.
Well, he was West Virginian, so it didn't make much difference. Incidentally, one of the first of the radio commissioners was a West Virginian, Judge Robinson.
Hello, I'm Charlie Jennings. From 1982 to 1995, I served as the operations manager of sales, programming, and promotions for WJLS. One of the highlights of my entire career was working for Joe L. Smith, the original license holder. I would guess that most WJLS employees probably don't know that Mr. Smith had an engineering aptitude. In 1939, an inspector for the Federal Communications Commission arrived to conduct the final inspection for 560 WJLS. When the inspector arrived, Mr. Smith was assembling the audio console on the floor of what later became the sales offices at 102 North Canal Street. I'm told the FCC inspector actually got down on the floor with Mr. Smith and helped assemble the audio console. Needless to say, 560 WJLS passed inspection. When Mr. Smith passed away, Nancy Smith, who was a school teacher by trade, was forced into managing the radio stations. Affectionately and with much respect, I jokingly called her the Big Cheese in her new role. That nickname was adopted by the staff, and a more intimate relationship between ownership and management was born. While Mr. Smith built the physical plant of the radio stations, Nancy Smith rebuilt the infrastructure. Mrs. Smith authorized moving the country format from 560 WJLS to 99.5, and the real magic began. A little bit of trivia for you. I was trying to figure out how to market WJLS in a memorable way which would set us apart from the competition. Because WJLS had a tower that was 1,050 feet above average terrain, and the station's effective radiated power was 150,000 watts, I realized when it came to coverage area, WJLS was the big dog. And then I realized, that's it. We were the big dog in country, and Fleroy, the mascot, was born. If you ask any former WJLS employee who worked at WJLS back in the 80s and 90s, they'll all probably agree it was a magical time. So, to the employees from my generation, to the employees of the generation before us, and to the current staff of WJLS, happy 80th anniversary. The torch has been passed. It's now up to you guys to create some memories and some magic of your own.
Oh, what makes our people go? All of us together, we're West Virginia people. West Virginia 56 WJLS. Hey, what makes this happy day? You and us together, we're West Virginia people. West Virginia 56 WJLS. We are living with the finest people in America. That's what they say. That's what we say. We've got it all the way, living here together. West Virginia people, West Virginia 56, WJLS. West Virginia 56, WJLS. We are living with the finest people in America. That's what they say. That's what we say. We've got it all the way, living here together. West Virginia people, West Virginia 56, WJLS. West Virginia 56, WJLS. Night people, all right people. With West Virginia 56 all night, WJLS. West Virginia 56 all night, WJLS. Listen, West Virginia, listen with your heart. Make a happy song, sing along, do your part. We're West Virginia 56, WJLS. This is West Virginia, where your world belongs. Listen to your day, to your life, to your songs on West Virginia 56, WJLS. This is almost heaven.